Hello.
It's us again.
It's us again. What have you done? What?
I was expecting something exciting.
And you got us. Welcome, everyone, to You Choose, a Choose Your Own Adventure style show where we're navigating our way through the entire CNCF landscape. So we're in chapter 2 right now. What does that mean?
That's very enthusiastic when you say entire, kind of like that.
Entire?
Yeah. I mean, projects are coming faster than we are covering them, so.
It's job security.
Exactly.
So so we're in chapter 2. And at the end of chapter 1, we had our application running in a development environment attached to backing services where it could be natively developed further in Kubernetes. And now we're getting our application from there to a production environment where it's managed with GitOps. We also made a cluster provisioning decision in the first episode. And now, today, we're going to talk about Ingress. I can't wait.
Yeah. Should we do the implementation of the last week's winner first?
Yeah, of course. I'm just... just bringing folks up to speed, just establishing a place and a time and an objective. So those of you who are familiar with the show know that we went over GitOps last week and we put it to a vote. So there was a vote on the artist formerly known as Twitter, where y'all got to choose which GitOps implementation you wanted. But before we reveal the chosen technology, not the winner, but the chosen technology, let's do a little recap. So we had Argo CD and Flux and kapp-controller on as the 3 CNCF projects. Kapp-controller is part of Carvel that do GitOps. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah. So there are 3 GitOps tools that do GitOps. That's the summary of it.
What's the summary of the tools versus each other? Like Argo CD has a very large community. That was a big selling point for as Christian's presentation. Helm, it integrates more specifically with the technologies that it supports. So the Helm integration and the Flux, they have specific controllers, specific CRDs for Helm versus Flux, and I'm not sure what else it supports.
So Flux uses those natively, while Argo CD uses those just to transform it to pure YAML, and then YAML goes to your cluster, not Helm or anything like that. Mm-hmm.
And then kapp-controller also has the one CRD, just the app CRD. But then part of what Scott was saying as part of his presentation was that it supports like mix and match all kinds of different technologies under the hood with that thing. So like not only is Git supported, but like HTTP, OCI images, image package bundles and then also like it supports a lot of different templating engines. So besides like Helm and Customized, then there's also SOPs and Q and other ones I don't really know.
YTT.
YTT, yes, of course,
hey,
YTT.
How can you forget that one?
Well, Scott, in the thing,
Shame on you.
That was
Shame on you,
he was like, you chose YTT earlier in GitOps, so therefore you should choose kapp-controller. But then later, as soon as we brought everyone on the screen, Scott and Kingdon were both like, oh, we support YTT too.
Look, Whitney, you cannot blame Scott now as a way to get away from you forgetting about YTT. You cannot pin it on him now. It's not cool. Not cool. No.
Scott, please forgive me. I hope. I have a question though. Something I didn't understand from the last episode, maybe because I'm relatively new and don't have a lot of context. But a big thing from Kingdon was like, instead of supporting just a Git repository, you could use an OCI registry now as something. And I don't understand what's good about that. What's good about that? Why are people excited about that?
Keeping things in registry because, look, here it goes, right? You've been looking at the Git for a long time, and then you get bored with looking at Git for a long time, and then you want to look at registry for a while, and then you will get bored with registry, and either you will go back to Git, or you will go to the third thing, right? It's boring. That's the same logic why Netflix lost its customers. Kind of like it got bored after a couple of years, and then you need to change.
There's something else new to look at. Hey, here's a question then. Isn't integrating with OCI instead of Git, aren't you getting you're locking yourself into Flux CD? And how would you mark? I guess since Flux CD has those specific controllers for Helm, for customize, for whatever.
And it's not really locking because first of all, you can use OCI images with Argo CD as well. If you, for example, if you're packaging it as a Helm chart, it can use OCI image. Helm chart can be in OCI registry and stuff like that. So when Helm can pull it, so it's not really exclusive to Flux. It's just that Flux puts more effort into it. Let's put it that way, right? And nobody cares about your last year's releases anyway. So if you want to change tomorrow from Flux to Argo CD, you just start using Git instead of OCI, and it's fine. And the other way around.
Right on. So with that, is there anything else you want to say about last week's episode before we reveal the chosen technology?
No. I'm saying nothing.
Yeah. That means Victor has something to say, but it's not very nice. Okay.
I'm learning.
Yeah. All right. So without further ado, y'all picked Argo CD, which honestly, I got to say, I mean, nothing against Argo CD. Argo CD is great, but I'm a little disappointed because Argo CD is like the big dog of the tools, and I wanted to see something new.
Well, you will have the chance today.
Yeah. Like, what do you mean?
I mean, it's another chance. People can pick something new, something different.
Pick something new and different. Although I don't.
Eventually, we will get to episodes about technology that nobody uses. So then you will definitely have something new.
Yeah, and also similar with this Ingress implementations, I maybe just don't know enough or didn't know enough about Ingress to understand what is a big dog in the field. So, basically with Ingress, everything's new. But anyway, let's drum roll, please. Let's show us the implementation of Argo
CD. Can you
CD.
put my screen on?
Yes.
There we go.
Yes.
That's my screen. Excellent. Okay, let's do it. Now, this will be slightly longer than others because unlike others, I did not actually set it up. So, and I need to put the mic here so that I can type. Cool. So, Argo CD. First of all, I'm going to install it using Helm. I have a Helm values file here stuff that doesn't matter, really. It honestly does not matter. What does matter is that I will install it first with Helm, and this will be the last time I'm actually instructing Kubernetes to create something or manage something directly. From now on, it will all be in Git. And now I need to figure out what to talk about for next 15 or 20 seconds, and I don't know. So we are going to wait in silence because, yeah, exactly.
I'm not saving you,
And
Victor.
well, huh?
Said I'm not saving you.
No, I don't need saving. It's not the time. Do I feel uncomfortable? No. Usually other people feel uncomfortable when I don't. You experience that. I'm capable of not uttering a word during lunch or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're kind of a wet noodle socially. You exist to be entertained, not
I
to
don't know.
entertain.
Wet noodle sounds too sexual to me. I don't know really what the intention was, but it sounds very yes. I don't know. Very picked up that thing, but okay. Anyways, so Argo CD is up and running. Now there are two things we need in Argo CD. Actually, the first one is not absolutely necessary because it comes with the default project, but we can define a project that's kind of a group of group for Argo CD applications. This is a silly one that just says you have permissions to do anything you want. Anything you want, because that's how awesome I am. So I'm going to apply that. Apply file name Argo CD project. There we go. .yaml. Boom. We have a project. You will see project in action soon once my cluster bakes up. The second thing we need is actually, what else do we need? We probably need an application somewhere. Where do I have? Okay, we'll get to that. Okay, now I want to manage some applications, and I have two applications that are important simply because we chose them in the past, in the first season of the show. And the first one is Schema Hero. So I already have Schema Hero defined here in this file, Schema Hero YAML, not TLS, cut, there we go. This is Schema Hero, it's just application. This is actually Argo CD application. And what it does is it says, hey, whatever is in this repository and whatever is in this directory, I want to have it running in a cluster, whatever it is, right? It's very simple. Those are the only two arguments that you need to care about. This is the repo, this is the directory in that repo, and that's about it. Now, so what I'm going to do is Argo CD, there we go. I'm going to copy Schema Hero, and I'm going to copy it in a directory infra, right? That's all I did. Copied that file over there. And I already committed it. I didn't want to do that. That's code complete. I shouldn't have been done, but who cares? Anyways, and I want to install Schema Cert Manager also because we needed it in the previous chapter. This is what it is. Now, this is slightly different. This is telling, hey, this is Argo CD application, but don't look for specific repository. Look for this Helm chart, this version of the Helm chart, and a couple of parameters, right? That's all it does. Look for the Helm chart, and whatever is in that chart, run it in a cluster, right? So I'm going to copy it, which is Cert Manager. There we go, to infra directory, right? And then I'm going to edit and commit it. And I'm going to push it to my Git repository. Now comes the last thing. Now I have all that set up. I did not yet instruct Argo CD to have that initial application, that the one that will start crawling all those repositories and Helm charts and what's not. And I have that defined here. Argo CD apps YAML. This is two applications I have in this case. One called production apps. And it says, hey, look for this repository and this directory for applications. And then another one called production infra. It says, look for the same repository, but different directory for infrastructure, right? Even though we're not going to use all of that today. It's just setting it up for later. So last command, last time I execute kubectl apply, Argo CD apps. There we go. Okay. 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 I said okay. There we go. Created. Now, if I want to take a look at what's happening in a cluster, I can say, hey, Argo CD, give me all the applications. And you will see now that there is those two applications that I just created, and then they figured out, specifically infra, that there is Cert Manager and that there is Schema Hero. And it's now progressing, or it's doing something with it. It will get there eventually. Now, if I take a look at Schema Hero, system get all, something should be running probably, hopefully. There we go. Schema Hero is up and running. Success, big success. And Cert Manager, up and running. Right? Now, I will do last thing. This is not that important, but I need for Cert Manager to specify the issuer, and to specify the issuer, I need my email. Cool. I'm going to show you the issuer. This is the one that will be fetching certificates for our production cluster. Again, something that we covered in the previous season, but now we're doing it seriously. And, email is Brigitte Whitney. I don't know, why is that there? Why? That's Whitney making commits. They're changing things. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is copy this issuer to the infra directory. Again, I'm going to replace the witness email with my email because she shouldn't be there in the first place. I'm going to change the Ingress class. I'm not going to say why, and I'm going to push, and my cert manager will be now fully operational, start getting certificates. Now, important thing, there is one thing missing that I'm not showing here. You can stop sharing the screen. Now, what is missing here is that Argo CD has an amazing web UI. And I'm not going to show you web UI. And the reason why I'm not going to show you web UI, because to access web UI, we need Ingress. Imagine that.
Imagine that.
And that happens to be the subject of this episode.
Excellent. Thank you for that. I see that there are some questions coming through in chats, but we're not going to answer them yet. We'll save all the questions of the entire episode to the end because we got a lot to get through. And I have a lot to say about Ingress. So I want to talk about learning Ingress from scratch. So I'm a relatively new learner, and I only got introduced to Kubernetes period in 2020. And so my first, when you first learn Kubernetes, you learn like all the control plane stuff, and then you start to learn some of the Kubernetes objects, and you specifically learn the ones that touch a running application first. So you're like pod, replica set, deployments, service, config map, secret, and Ingress. So I first learned Ingress when I didn't even know about like controllers really, or custom resource definitions, or any of the more advanced Kubernetes stuff. And when I heard Ingress, I feel actually kind of self-conscious talking about this in front of all the maintainers. But anyway, when I learned Ingress, it doesn't have a controller that's native to Kubernetes. So everything else already has a controller as part of the controller binary that comes as part of an install of Kubernetes. So when you're learning Kubernetes, you do a fresh little install of your kind cluster locally, and then you go to make an Ingress and apply it to your cluster. Nothing happens. And that's because you need an Ingress implementation, which is what we're going to talk about today, but specifically an Ingress controller. Are you hearing me, Victor? I'm just talking.
Yes, I am. I'm just answering the questions. I'm hearing you, but I'm not listening to you.
Okay.
So let's be honest. Let's be honest for a change. Okay? There we go.
So then I went to the Kubernetes documentation to figure out how to get an Ingress controller so that I could apply an Ingress as a learner. And then there are 30 different projects on that page. And it is so confusing because
did they miss some projects?
What do you mean? Did you miss some
projects? Did they miss to list some projects? It cannot be only 30.
30 doesn't seem like enough.
No, it doesn't sound like it's too small of a number.
And then as a brand new learner, I'm so confused too because it's like Ingress implementation, Ingress service, Ingress controller, API gateway, and L7. Like there's so many. And then I see things about like based on Envoy, with NGINX, with traffic. Like then I see what I now know to be is a networking layer, but my little baby eyes laying there looking at that page for the first time was just like, I have no idea what any of this is. It all feels like different stuff. And I quit. And then I left technology altogether. No.
You should do what I do. I just pretend that I know what it means.
I hadn't learned that trick yet.
L7, of course it's L7.
Of course, L7.
Of course. And it wouldn't be higher number than L5 if it's not better. Come on. You start from somewhere, you start from 1, and then you eventually get to 9. So L7 does, I know that now that it refers to like the OSI networking model in the L7 layer being the application layer or whatever. But so that was all my first impressions of Ingress. And I really did put it on a shelf and like, I'll figure this out later. And then now I have the privileged learning path, this gift of this enlightening show that I do where I have guests come on and teach me things. So I've had
I've done episodes about all the 3 technologies we're touching today: Contour, Ingress NGINX, and Emissary-ingress. And they've all, every single one of those guests has taught me a little bit more about understanding Ingress generally. So I think the important thing to know, and if anyone in chat wants to interact with me, that'd make me feel nice too. The important thing to know is that the Kubernetes Ingress object itself isn't fantastic. Like, it has a lot of shortcomings. And that's why all these 30 different projects plus, more exist, is to help take care of these shortcomings or to improve on the native Ingress object. So the native Ingress object doesn't have enough functionality. Like, people want to be able to root in ways that the native Kubernetes Ingress object doesn't do, like weighted load balancing, for example, or rooting based on headers. What's another example, Victor?
I already said that I don't know. I'm pretending. I cannot, when I'm pretending that I know, I cannot answer things directly. Well, all I can say is that it must be L7.
But L7. Gee, L7
it must be L7.
I used to like this band called L7 in high school a lot. Anyway, also, the native Kubernetes object doesn't separate concerns between operations people and then like developer type folks. So operations people who care about everything, all the traffic in the whole cluster and making sure all the rules are obeyed properly. And then an application person that just, for the love of God, just wants to get traffic through their app, and they care about nothing else, and they don't want to be bothered with the rest of it. And then the native Kubernetes object doesn't have any status information. And so those are all the problems with the native Kubernetes object. And then all of these 30 different projects are solving them in different ways. Some of them are solving them by adding annotations to the native Kubernetes object, and then those annotations go off and do their thing. And that can be not the best because it's unstructured data and hard to keep track of what's what. But then the other ways that projects are doing it is that they add entirely new custom resources to the cluster and either also support the Kubernetes Ingress object, or maybe they don't use that Kubernetes Ingress object at all and they use only their own custom resources. And as a new learner, that was very confusing. But I think I'm done ranting, unless you want to talk about Gateway API. But maybe you can talk about Gateway API.
Too early. Don't do it yet. It's very exciting, and I think it's going to bring sanity to madness that we have with ingresses today. Meaning that different syntaxes, different labels, different this or that. So it's awesome. It's Gateway API is absolutely awesome, but I think that we're not there yet. Mostly not the specification, but from the implementation perspective.
Oh, okay. I think it's meant to GA this fall, and it's
but there is a GA of specification, and then
everyone
we
has
need to have
implement it.
GA applications of that specification, right? Which is most ingresses will eventually reach GA. For some already did for cluster API. Gateway API support. It's coming.
So as a new learner, API Gateway API, not the same thing at all. And when we're talking about Gateway API, we're talking about a specification for Ingress, where it models the way to network in Kubernetes, and it does that by supplying custom resources that everyone can use, and then build their own specific implementation on top of those custom resources, those Gateway API resources. And those resources do take into account separate concerns or adding functionality in a structured way. All the problems of the native Ingress object are taken care of as part of Gateway API. But the 3 projects today, that's something I would be looking for, is what do y'all have Gateway API compatibility coming? Is that part in your roadmap? I think that's important. I think it's the future. What do you think?
Yeah.
I
bet they do.
All right. Is there anything you'd like to add before we introduce our guests here?
I know nothing.
You know nothing. Okay, so we have we're going to say hi to Alice first. Welcome, Alice. Please unmute yourself and tell us who you are and what you're here to teach.
Hello, I'm Alice. I am a maintainer on Emissary-ingress, and I'm here to talk about it.
Awesome. We're so excited to have you here, and we'll hear your presentation here shortly.
To all other speakers, learn how to do it briefly like she did. Well done.
You're modeling the way a guest can
You can say whatever you want.
You're the specification for it. Perfect. Anyway, thank you so much, Alice. And next up, we have Ricardo. Hello. Please.
Hi there. My name is Ricardo. I live in Brazil. I am one of the maintainers of Ingress NGINX. I hope this was brief enough to Victor.
Do you know what? You're welcome to make it long. I'll support you.
Yeah, you can make it long. Most people ignore me. I don't know why are you not doing it, but okay.
I'm afraid now.
Don't be afraid, Ricardo. Thank you so much, and we'll see you shortly. Hello, Sanjay. Welcome.
Hey everyone, I'm one of the maintainers of Contour, and glad to see everyone and talk about Contour.
Awesome. We'll see you shortly. Bye. Okay, Alice, here you are. I'm getting the timer out. I'm our timer today. I'm going to put your stuff on the screen.
Oh, one sec. Let me start the slideshow, and you can tell me when it's good.
Okay, ready, set, go.
All right, so what is Emissary-ingress? It's an open source CNCF incubating project. It is an API gateway with self-service config. So that's sort of what Whitney was talking about, where we have multiple different CRDs and you can split them apart. So some folks manage certain ones that are higher level, and then developers can just focus on creating routing. We have integrations with Istio, Console, and Linkerd. It is powered by Envoy Proxy. So why should you try Emissary? It's battle tested and mature, at least as far as mature can be in this landscape, because most of the projects here aren't that mature in the grand scheme of things. But we have lots of people who've tried using it, and they seem to like it a lot. And we have configuration via CRDs. That is the main way you configure it. But we also do support the Ingress resource by default. So if you just happen to really want to use those, Emissary will read them and use them. I would say that one of the strengths that Emissary has is that you can start out really simple. The config is really minimal to just get basic stuff going, but it also supports a ton of advanced features if you really want to get into them. So the main problem you're trying to solve is that Envoy Proxy is super powerful. There's tons of config and it's able to handle lots of requests, but there's no way a single human can manage all of its config, and even a team. It's just not meant to be something that humans are working with directly. And so the config that Emissary uses is meant to take an opinionated stance on configuring Envoy. For most use cases, we want to make it so that that config is as small and efficient as possible for most use cases. And then the CRD division to empower multiple user personas was a big reason why we wanted to create our own CRDs. So I've got a couple minutes left. I'm going to go ahead and try doing the quick start, and we'll see how it goes. I have already gone ahead and installed the product just to save a little time, but we've got a Helm chart here, or YAML if you prefer, to get that running. And then first thing we're going to do is create a listener. So this is just going to open up port 8080 on the container, and then it's going to listen for HTTP requests. Go ahead and create that. And the service that gets created by default forwards port 80 externally to 8080 on the container. Next, I'm going to go ahead and install a little demo service that'll respond to HTTP requests. And then last, I'm going to go ahead and create a mapping. So this is what's doing the routing. We're going to route requests on /backend/ to the quote service. And then I'm going to grab the IP address of my load balancer, store it in that little variable, and then we're going to send a curl. And you can see we got a response back from our server. It just sends a random quote every time we send a request. And I think I've got enough time. I'm going to go ahead and quickly demo how you could set up TLS. So we're going to create one more listener, this one on port 8443 internally, port 80 externally. This one is going to be for HTTPS. Next thing we're going to do is create some certs that are self-signed. And then I'm going to go ahead and create those as a Kubernetes secret. Last step is to create a host. And this is what controls most of your host name level settings like TLS, all that sort of stuff. This one is just going to use that secret that we created right there. Cool, and if I scroll back up to my curl command, we can change that to HTTPS. And we can see we get a response right there. So as you can see, the config for most of the basic use cases is good for most people. If you want to get fancy with it and start configuring a whole bunch of different ports and host names to route into things, you can totally do that. Emissary empowers people to go ahead and create their own authentication and have Emissary talk to that if you want to implement authentication or rate limiting as well on your own. So yeah, that's about all I had to share for Emissary, and hopefully you guys give it a try sometime.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That was great. You had a full 20 seconds to spare, so wonderful.
I was worried about going over. I usually do that.
It was great. Thank you so much. We did get some questions during that, but we'll answer those questions at the end during the Q&A part of the show. So cool. Thank you so much. All right, Ricardo's next. Welcome, friends. I'm starting your thing. I need to get my clock. Okay, I'm ready. Are you ready, Ricardo?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, ready, set, go.
Cool. So I've tried to just bring a bit on what is Ingress NGINX. So that's an NGINX, which is a proxy that a bunch of companies have already battle tested and used. It acts as a proxy for Kubernetes workloads. It is dynamically configured by a controller that creates the server location backends and all of the NGINX configuration based on Ingress's services secrets and so on. So it's a bit more than that, but yeah, that is what it is, right? A quick story on that and why usually people go directly to Ingress NGINX and not why people should be using that. I'm going to be there, but Ingress NGINX was created around 2016 by Alejandro, which was the first Ingress controller implementation. And actually it predates from the Ingress API on Kubernetes. So that's why some things, they still work using just annotations. We don't have custom resource definitions. It's mostly Ingress objects and yeah, all of the core objects on Kubernetes. We use NGINX as a high-performance HTTP proxy server, OpenResty for dynamically program NGINX behavior, and Go for the controller. And also one of the technologies that we have, they are tiers, because every time we need to make a new release or someone wants to introduce a new annotation, we cry, right? So that's, I feel you with me on that. Yeah, so we are trying to solve this problem. I have a demo which is recorded, sorry folks, but I have just tried to show how Ingress NGINX works. So I come here, I have a pod and a service running, and then I just create an Ingress rule, and then the reconciliation happens here on the left side. If I curl, I can just see my my request. And if we take a look into the configuration of NGINX, what we are going to see, it's the server definition and some Lua definitions to send the request to the right place, right? How can I pass this? Yeah. So some main features, we do dynamic reconfiguration for backend and certificates. We have OpenTelemetry integration, certificate authentication, session affinity, and almost all of the NGINX directives are supported somehow. We are trying to extend a bit more, but without adding more annotations. And yeah, so Gateway API is actually something that we want. And I think it's fair actually to let people know that we have some lacking features as well. Like we don't have Gateway API implementation yet, which is something that's on our roadmap. we are migrating to newer NGINX versions, but today that's a constant complaint of people due to our OpenREST integration. So we are trying to get rid of OpenREST and just use a bunch of NGINX and some new cool technologies from NGINX, including some fancy Rust integration that everybody's talking like, hey, we support Rust language. We don't today on NGINX. We don't have any integration using Rust, but we are targeting to use that based on Rust and JavaScript. And I think that's all. I hope I didn't forget anything. If I did, sorry.
That was great. So Ricardo, thank you so much.
Sure.
We have questions. Thank you so much, everyone, for the questions. Keep them coming. We're going to answer all those questions at the end after the next presentation. And we'll see you, Ricardo. And hello to Sanjay. Welcome.
Hello. Well,
are you
nice
ready?
To see everyone? I think so.
All right. Ready, set, go.
All right. So I think all of the general stuff about Ingress that Alice and Ricardo mentioned really applies to Contour as well. Contour is an Ingress controller that uses Envoy as its data plane and uses a Go control plane written in Go to serve XDS to configure Envoy. Contour supports you to configure your Ingress routing with the native Ingress resource. So we can take a look at this cluster we have here. This is a kind cluster running on a development machine, and we can take a look at the Contour installation in here. So we've got this. I got it installed in this Ingress example namespace. So I've got 2 instances of the Contour control plane and 2 instances of Envoy that are connecting to Contour to get configuration. We can take a look at an example Ingress that we've got in the cluster, and we can see this is the output on some of the summary information on this Ingress. We can take a deep dive into here and take a look at we've populated the status on this Ingress to say where users can access the routes for this Ingress on what IP address to use. And we've got a couple routes that we have configured here, so we can access a couple different sites with this Ingress. And so take a little look at what this actually gives us. We have one actually going back to the Ingress rules themselves. They're for Ingress Site 1, Ingress Site 2. So we can take a look at that. And we have, this is just the kind of Ingress conformance echo server outputting some information. So we can see that the host for the proxied request from, so the client makes a request to the Envoy service. Envoy then proxies a request to your backend pods. This is the host that the backend pod received a request for, and some other information on headers that were in the request. We can see the requests are being, if we look at the pod there, it should be changing every so often, or not, because I'm always going to the same pod. Nice. It should be going between the multiple pods in the backend service. Of course, in the live demo, it doesn't want to show you that. But yeah, so you can use vanilla Ingress with Contour. We support that. And I think Whitney alluded earlier on kind of the improvements on Ingress that various controllers have implemented. So Contour used to have a custom resource named Ingress Route, but now that's become the HTTP proxy resource. So if we take a look at our HTTP proxies in our cluster, we have another HTTP proxy here, and that it's what Whitney referenced earlier about improvements on Ingress itself, is that we wanted to build a structured custom resource specific to Contour that augments Ingress, how you manage your Ingress routes with the ability to delegate concerns between different teams and different namespaces, and also adds more information about status. So You can see in the summary description there the status and the status description. So we've worked hard on being able to give users the ability to see information about their configuration, whether it's valid, invalid, stuff like that. So this is a completely valid HTTP proxy. We can make it invalid by say we typoed the service that we're talking to here.
30 seconds.
30 seconds. All right. Well, we can see we got invalid configuration here as well. So, yeah. So Contour really strives to offer different experience in terms of like what you can configure, what you can operationally see, and as well we've quick plug in for the last few seconds. We've implemented Gateway API support, so we might be talking about that later as well.
Yes, great job. Awesome. Great. Let's get everyone back on the screen. Yeah, and I need to figure out how to turn off my timer. All right. Hello, welcome everyone. That was really great work, all of you. Kudos. Good job. We have some really good questions from the chat. This question happened right at the very beginning of the episode, and that is, are we going to see any TCP UDP ingress? So I'm wondering if how about show of hands? Does anyone support TCP UDP? Yes. Everybody?
Emissary
2 or 3?
supports TCP, but not UDP.
Okay. There you go. So the answer is yes, Thompson, a very belated yes. And then we have a question for Alice. What was the reason to rename Ambassador to Emissary?
It's kind of a confusing story, but yeah, we get this one a lot. Originally, the company that I work for that created Emissary was called DataWire, and the product was called Ambassador. Everyone just started calling us by our company name Ambassador because that was our only product. And then we decided to donate it to the CNCF, and then they're like, hey, just so you know, if you want to change your company name to Ambassador, like we were planning on doing, you're going to lose that if you donate Ambassador to the CNCF. We will own the name Ambassador now. So we had to change the name of Emissary because we had just registered to change our company name from DataWire to Ambassador. So that is the history behind that.
Okay.
Same product,
Thank you.
just a different name, different company name too.
I have a question, another show of hands. Which of y'all consider yourselves an API gateway? Nobody is an API?
API gateway, like I describe that as Emissary, but really I feel like it's just a buzzword. Like it's just a gateway for your APIs. I feel like it's oversimplifying what like an Ingress controller gateway. Like Ingress controller kind of implies that it just controls Ingress objects, but that's not really true for any of these products. Like we have other ways of configuring them. API gateway also makes it sound like, oh, it's only good as the entry point for your APIs, but there are many more ways that you could use it as well. So they're just labels and kind of buzzwords, I guess.
Is there a word that y'all like the most of all the different things that an Ingress implementation can be called? Is there one? Sanjay, do you have one that you like to be called?
I think people understand Ingress controller, so that's a decent one. But gateway API gateway gets confusing, as Alan said. Maybe in the future, as gateway API changes how people think about Ingress, maybe gateway controller will be a good term. But I guess for people understanding what each of these components does, I think Ingress controller right now makes sense.
Okay.
Actually, my vote was going to not call the gateway API because that confused it. If you ask me, it should have been Ingress v2.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The original name was Ingress v2, actually.
Oh, interesting. Okay, another show of hands. Who supports TLS secrets in a different namespace? Alice, yeah, Contour and Emissary. And then Ricardo, the question is for you anyway that I'm kind of referring to. Does NGINX support TLS secrets in a different namespace?
We use it to support some resources on different namespaces, but for some security on the Ingress side, on the NGINX side, we have decided to not do that right now. The only cross namespace that we support, it's the default wildcard when you bootstrap and you say, hey, use this secret. But I know that there is actually some desire to reintroduce that, and even Gateway API, if I recall correctly, the new API supports that. So we are targeting to get this back, but on some more safe way of doing that.
Excellent. Thank you.
With Emissary, we by default allow you to reference secrets in another namespace by just saying secret name dot secret namespace. There is a flag to turn that functionality off if you want to lock that down. I'm guessing Contour probably supports it as well via reference grants, but Sanjay would have to confirm.
Yeah, so I think one of the original, so Gateway API has the concept of a reference grant Alice mentioned, where it's kind of like a handshake where you're saying that the secret in this other namespace can be referenced by a resource in another namespace. That is very similar, and I think it was inspired by Contour's TLS certificate delegation, and probably other projects have something similar. We have a custom resource that lets you basically do the same thing, except it was very specifically scoped to TLS secrets. The reference grant idea is kind of a more general idea that Gateway API, that's included in Gateway API, but also could be promoted into core Kubernetes as well for lots of different uses. So keep an eye on that,
makes sense.
in the core APIs as well.
Cool. We have a question for how extensible is Emissary, but I think that's a good question for everybody. Like, what's your extensibility like? So we'll start, Alice, with you since the question's for you, but I'm going to ask the same question of the other two of you too.
Sure. I'm not sure exactly what we're going to define extensible as, so I'll just mention everything that might be relevant. There are, of course, a ton of fields in Emissary that just expose Envoy fields. So if there's an Envoy field, there's a good chance that Emissary just has it in the CRDs. We have global Lua filters if you want to write some custom processing there. Emissary has an auth service resource. So you can say, here's my service, talk to it for auth, and then you can implement Envoy's X.Z protocol. You can do stuff like mingle the headers, approve, deny requests, that sort of thing. Same thing for rate limiting. You can say, hey, talk to my service for rate limiting, and do whatever you want and say allow the request through, rate limit it. We have a logs sync resource. You can say just shoot all your logs out to this service in this format, and then us and Envoy will do that. We do the same thing for tracing as well. So you can say, here's my tracing sync, and here's the format I want you to send traces in. So those are the main ways that you would extend Emissary.
Thank you. Cool. Ricardo, how do you extend Ingress NGINX?
Okay, so you can recompile the container, adding, rebuild the container and NGINX adding some modules that NGINX already supports, if you want that. And also supporting Lua as a script language inside NGINX, even if you cannot use directly the Ingress objects, but you can, I've seen some folks adding some authentication integration with like JWT or using Lua to develop some extra modules directly and building their own. Right.
Thanks. And Sanjay.
Yeah, so similar to Emissary, Contour exposes like tons of stuff that Envoy supports. Tracing, rate limiting, external authentication, all sorts of features like that. In terms of general extensibility, we've kind of been a little bit opinionated about providing you the ability to just write a Lua script that changes, that implements some custom behavior for you, just for the idea that Contour is often used in multi-tenant scenarios where there's many different users considering configuring Contour and Envoy, and just to protect the installation of Contour itself. But we have an open issue right now about implementing more general extensibility using the Envoy external processing filter. If that's interesting to anyone, please chime in on GitHub. Basically, similar to like external authorization, Envoy would receive a request, reach out to another server that you may have set up in your cluster, and then that server can modify a request and then return it to the user or modify it before it goes to the back end. If you're interested in that, there's some contributors who want to work on that, so please let us know.
Cool. It wouldn't be an open source show without soliciting contributors. There's a project called Envoy Gateway. So both Emissary-ingress and Contour use Envoy as their network data plane, as you call it, the networking layer. Is that another name for data plane? Okay, I'm learning. And so what I understand is Envoy Gateway is a toolkit for a standardized way to work with Envoy. Is that accurate?
I can talk about this because I'm also a maintainer of Envoy Gateway.
There you go.
Yeah, so Envoy Gateway is essentially an opinionated take on what an API gateway / Ingress controller backed by Envoy proxy and using the gateway API as a configuration language should look like. So you install it and it will create and manage a fleet of Envoy proxies for you using gateway API resources. It is still very much pre-GA, so if you're interested in it, we'd love to get people involved, but I would not recommend you use it for production at this time. We've got a little ways to go before then, but we're going to try to get there as fast as possible. Did I cover everything about it? What's the future of Emissary-ingress about it? I don't know exactly what the future of Emissary is in regards to Envoy Gateway. I don't think Emissary is just going to go away or anything, but Emissary authors and Contour authors are involved with the Envoy Gateway project.
Cool. Is there anything you'd like to add? Yeah.
I would echo that. I think Envoy Gateway is a really interesting way to, if you want to kind of make the Envoy configuration and management like substrate standard, right? And then possibly have implementation specific or vendor specific stuff on top of a kind of standard, well-known thing that's backed by the Envoy project. It's a really cool idea. But at the moment, Contour's not going anywhere, just as Alice said, Envoy Gateway is still under development. So keeping an eye on it, but yeah.
Excellent. I have a question that maybe is I'm going to give it to Victor because it doesn't seem relevant to any projects.
I need to start paying attention. Okay.
This is about Azure. Azure promoting an application gateway ingress controller. Do you have an opinion about versus AKS?
I have very, very superficial knowledge about it, so no.
Okay. We're going to pass on this question, I think, because it's not relevant to the projects at hand. So thanks for the question, though. We appreciate you. Ricardo, this next one is for you. Well, for everybody, but I'm asking you in particular. Oops, I just hit it. The question is, do all three have WAF capabilities? Question number one is for my own edification. What is WAF? And then do you have it?
Yeah. So first of all, WAF, it's a web application firewall.
Okay.
It's an inspector that you put on your proxy that opens the requests and see like if you're trying to do some SQL injection, if you're trying to bypass or do something that can be a security problem to the application. So it's an application firewall, right? Did I explain it at least?
I think that's great.
Fine?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. So usually what we've been seeing people using as a web application firewall on the open source, because you have some closed source on that. It's a project that was called Mod Security. It started first on for the Apache proxy, and then it started to have some modules for NGINX, and if I record correctly, also for Envoy. But Mod Security has been announced to be deprecated and stopped to be maintained by the maintainers of it in 2024, right? So we are kind of, at least on NGINX, thinking on a way to migrate away from Mod Security. There is a new project called Coraza which is an attempt to implement, and actually a successful attempt to implement mod security, but in Go, using Go libraries. And at least for NGINX, our idea, and we are talking with the Coraza maintainers, it's to connect NGINX with Coraza, writing the web application firewall module in Go and connecting everything, and still having a web application firewall capability on NGINX, but instead of using mod security, using Coraza.
Cool. Do you want to comment, Sanjay, about whether Contour has WAF capabilities?
Yeah, to be honest, we haven't heard a huge amount of interest in integrating that directly with Contour. We had a few one-off issues, but no consistent community contribution or user base. But one thing we have seen people do is, especially particularly in AWS, is use a application load balancer in front of Contour, and then they can use a WAF with that. So depending on your use cases, yeah, you may be able to use some other public cloud provided tools or otherwise. But yeah, if people are heavily interested in using a web application firewall with Contour, again, shameless plug, let us know on GitHub and Slack, and we can talk about it and maybe get it implemented. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks. Would you like to comment, Alice?
Sure. Yeah, so Emissary does not have a WAF. I don't want to get in trouble for talking about other projects too much, but I'll just say the reason for that is it probably will never have a WAF because the paid product on top of Emissary has a WAF.
Got it.
That's not open source.
Yeah. So we have about 4 minutes left before the end of the show, but we still have a lot of questions. So just a temperature check. Do y'all need to go? Should we end it? Do you want to answer a couple more questions? How are you feeling? Thumbs up if you want to answer more. Thumbs up. Okay. So we're going to do a couple, maybe not all. How about Victor? Do you want to choose the last couple questions that we answer?
Yes.
They're starred.
I'm going to choose. Here we go. How does it differ from Ingresses, all three of them, many of them, from Istio Gateway?
Alice, you start, please.
Sure. I guess I'll start by saying that I haven't really looked into Istio Gateway very much. I just understand what it is at a surface level. What I do know is that I know we have a couple users of Emissary where they've said that they like to deploy Emissary in front and have that do most of their public internet facing stuff, and then have that route to Istio Gateway for a select couple services that they just like having as part of the Istio thing directly, because they want Emissary up front for the more feature-rich and performance stuff, whereas they like the Envoy or the Istio Gateway's integration with all the Istio stuff and its services and whatnot.
Cool. Ricardo, how does Ingress NGINX differ from Istio Gateway?
I'm in the same boat as Alice. I'm not sure. I didn't mess it too much with Istio, so I don't know actually what the Ingress install from Istio actually means. I know that some sort of edge or external to internal cluster traffic, but I can't say that much. Sorry, folks.
That's all right. Sanjay?
I would say that you can use Contour with something like Istio with a service mesh, but for most use cases, people just want Ingress. They don't need Istio. They don't need all of the machinery, all of the extra components that come with Istio. You saw in the demo, to get stuff working, you just need a few pods. You don't need all of the extra machinery that Istio provides, especially if you're just doing Ingress. So I don't know how much overhead Istio Gateway adds on top of something like a Contour or an NGINX or an Emissary, which are likely just using a few number of pods and a data plane to do the simple thing of getting traffic into your cluster.
Yeah. Most viable.
What my recommendation would be is a lot of people hear about service meshes. They're like, I need it. It sounds cool. I just pick an Ingress first, figure out how you want to do it, research your options and stuff first. But I see a lot of people get stuck in the trap of trying to implement a service mesh first or at the same time as they're implementing Ingress. It's like, do your research, figure out what you like. It's good to understand how they work together, but make sure you actually have traffic routing first before you implement the service mesh.
Excellent. That's great advice. Victor, you're up.
Oh, it's still me, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go with this one. And that's mostly because I do not know what API ext
Sure.
in Emissary is.
Emissary has been around for a while. Emissary actually predates Kubernetes CRDs, so initially we only did config for a bunch of weird ways like annotations and stuff. But when we created our own CRDs, there was obviously a bunch of learnings that we had as CRDs evolved and our own CRDs expanded. We had multiple different versions. So the way Kubernetes works is you can only have one of them as your storage version. And so for us, when we were migrating users off of the old versions of Emissary, we wanted to be able to support them running the new version side by side or directly with their old config with like a zero downtime thing was a request we got all the time. So it does add a little bit of overhead, but APIX is essentially a webhook where when you go to Kubernetes and say, I know you have 3 versions of this, mapping CRD installed, but I want the latest one because that's what the newest version of the product understands. It'll say, hey, give me, version v3 alpha 1, and then Kubernetes will talk to APIX as this webhook server to convert the stored older versions into the new one that the new product can understand. So likewise, you can create whatever kind of version CRD you want, and it'll store it as the version we selected as storage, and APIX translates between them. So that you can have whatever version of the product you want, use whatever version of the CRD you have.
Excellent.
Okay, here's the last one. What are the options to allow TLS termination for TCP as well as UDP? I think I know the answer, but I will let any of the other 3 guests get it.
Ricardo.
Volunteer. Oh, no volunteers. There we go.
For
Right,
traffic,
okay.
I'm not an expert.
I can, so I'm not sure about UDP TLS termination, actually, but we do
Can
support
you even do
TLS.
TLS with UDP?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
If it does, I'm not sure. For TCP TLS termination, we do support today on Ingress in NGINX. It's a feature that's called SNI, right? That's the server name indication. I never remember what the I means, but you check what's the host requested by the TLS communication, and then you can just do a bypass, not a bypass, but proxy directly the TCP connection to the backend. Right. On Ingress in NGINX today, we do support that, but because it was implemented a long time ago when NGINX didn't support its SNI, we do this proxy today inside the controller and not inside the proxy. But we do have we do have actually in the roadmap in the short term to migrate to NGINX directly.
Okay, I think that's all the questions.
There are more questions
actually-
we didn't get to, but they just keep rolling in, which is great. I'm loving the conversation, but I also want to be respectful of everyone's time.
Yeah, and I mean guests are also
So-
very welcome to answer it in comments if you have nothing better to do later on. So I mean, all those watching, whomever is watching, you can keep posting comments and somebody will answer them. Probably.
Yes.
Probably.
And please do
This
when
is
the video
disclaimer.
when it's over, and please do post in the comments, and we'll definitely be good about getting back to you and asking the maintainers to answer project specific questions. And now we're gonna say goodbye to everyone. So Alice will tell us one. Do you have something to say, Victor?
No. I thought you
Okay.
forgot something, but then I realized that I forgot something, and
All right, Alice, tell us one more pitch for Emissary-ingress, and then goodbye.
One more pitch for Emissary-ingress? Okay, I'll answer the question. Emissary does support HTTP 3. We got a guide for it. I think any of these Ingress solutions are going to do well by you. So just pick whatever one you like the configuration for most is my suggestion. Like look through all the resources, get a sense for what it would look like to have a bunch of config, and then just go with the one that has most the features that you need. Just whatever one you like the most. Yeah. I like Emissary, but I'm biased. So
Slightly biased. All right, Alice, thank you. Thank you for sharing your time and expertise with us today. Goodbye, friend. All right, Ricardo, tell us your closing statement, please.
I'd just like to thank everyone for watching. I know that Kubernetes does have a lot of decisions that you need to make, not only on Ingress, but network, CNIs, CSI, even the cloud providers. So it's great. My suggestion is just start, as Alice said, with something that suits your needs, and then you can just evolve and think on other ingresses. All of them, they are great. All of them, they have great developers, great maintainers working behind them, and I'm sure that all of us as maintainers have fun, right? But also, it's a long road to get everything done the way that everyone needs. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Sanjay, your closing statement, please.
All right. Yeah, I would echo what Alice and Ricardo said about thinking about your use cases, thinking about how you want to organize your config in your clusters. That might cause differences in how you view different controllers, different implementations of Ingress, and also take a look at Gateway API, because we're all working together as maintainers of Ingress controllers, maintainers of the Gateway API contributors. So take a look at Gateway API, get involved there. We're all working together on a great specification that we hope can be implemented across all the different Ingress controllers to maybe make your lives a little harder in choosing a different Ingress controller, but hopefully you can make a choice and be confident in that it's going to be supported across different things if you have different requirements later on. So yeah, please. Love Contour. Everyone else doing a great job, but when we're all working together on Gateway API.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your time and your expertise with us, Sanjay. All right. It's that time. It's time. Yes. It's time to vote. Where's, haha.
There's the link. Oh, we have a banner. Oh, vote.
Votes. And I say this every time, but it's not a popularity contest. Whichever one gets the most votes is not the winner. This is just a matter of what you found interesting and what you want to see demoed for you in our ongoing demo. I will say we probably will be doing this show for years, and whatever you choose now is a technology you're going to therefore interact with. Like we're going to be seeing. Yeah.
A small correction that we will be interacting in this show. And there is a repo. You can actually follow any path you want, right? So completely unrelated to what is chosen, right? What we're choosing is not really what you need to follow. It's what we are going to do in the next episode. That's it.
Yes. And someone's saying that I put the Twitter link in the comments. Someone's saying it seems broken, but really just go to my...
Yeah, you cannot post links unless you're me.
But I am posting as you. That's the thing. I could have posted as me if I tried. That's why I never participate in this chat.
Oh, yeah, it's my picture. It's my picture there.
It's your...
Okay, yeah, anyway. I mean, Vigity Whitney, there it is. I see it on a screen. At Vigity Whitney, go there. And you have 5 minutes to find it as a top tweet in her profile before she starts tweeting some other things. So be fast.
What? It's just I just tweet about my other shows. I'm not someone who says their opinions on Twitter so much. But that's no offense to those who do. Thank you everyone for coming today. Thank you for having such a great conversation with us, and thank you to our Ingress maintainers for coming and helping us all understand Ingress and sharing valuable time and expertise. Is there anything you'd like to say, Victor, before we end this show?
Nope, I'm not.
Nope.
I know nothing.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.